Good morning. Boston Black News. We here, 351 cities and towns, 22 neighbors in the city of Boston, 50 states, 7 continents. We are everywhere. We're so excited today, and it's real loud. Maybe I have my hearing aid in, but it's real loud. But it's just like, I sound real loud, but I want you to understand that you need to lift your voice. And I'm telling you, it's so important that we have black news. It's so important. Boston Black News founder and CEO Pastor Bruce Wall he's building a network so that we can hear and see what we're talking about in our community from you here at Boston Black News. And Common Square, historic, passing of the pen. Guess who's with me this morning? Pastor Karen Wall. How you doing this morning?
I'm fine, Ron. How are you?
Oh, yeah. I know you have a broadcast too, right?
Yes, I do.
Can you just tell a little bit about your broadcast?
Sure. It's a monthly broadcast, second Sunday of every month. The name of the broadcast, the title of the broadcast is At the Table. And, excuse me. And it is a phrase that was coined by Shirley Chisholm, the first black woman to run for president on a major ticket back in '68, and she said, when they don't give you a seat at the table, bring your own chair,
right,
and get on up to the table. So,
and you don't want to be on the menu,
right? Yeah, you don't want to be on the menu. You better be at the table, so you know you're not on the menu.
There you go. You got that.
And so the objective is just to bring, similar to, it fits in the mission of the station. To bring issues that are important to black women, black Christian women of every generation, to hear the stories from us, by us, through our lens, not somebody else telling us, what the issues are and what's important to us. And we've done everything from family, marriage, to a couple of weeks ago I had Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley on.
Right.
And she made an interesting comment when I shared with her the reason that the broadcast was named as it was. And she actually said that up until this new Congress, she was in Shirley Chisholm's old office. I didn't know that. And when I said, bring your own chair, she said, but what happens if the table is corrupt? You might have to build your own table.
All right now.
I was like, all right.
Yeah, she's all right.
Yeah.
No, I heard that she had Shirley Chisholm's office, and it's very fitting, right?
Yeah.
And here we are in Women's Month.
Yep.
And I have Pastor Karen Wall here, right? 9 o'clock. This is beautiful. But speaking of black media and, giving out information, Melvin Miller, 88 years old, he is passing not just the torch, but the pen. Sometimes we, try to go beyond our years, but he's doing something that's very important to us. I'm going to read some of this article. We can have a conversation. Those of you that are listening or viewing us here, right? 617-282-0685. You can call us. Me put my little Googles on, so I don't mess this up. Get the age. Yeah, that's right. Melvin Miller sells newspaper after 57 years of service. A younger but seasoned generation of journalists is leading the Bay State Banner in its second half century in the wake of a sale February 28 to a new black ownership team. Melvin Miller, the founder, owner, editor, and publisher of the influential Boston-based weekly for the last 57 years, sold the paper to a group headed by veteran WBPG-LP editor and videographer Ron Mitchell and filmmaker Andre Stock who has produced news magazine and documentary features WGBH-TV, Frontline, and Nova. Miller, a Roxbury native who still lives on the same block where he grew up, said it was time to pass the pen to a new leadership and editorial team. I'm 88 years old and getting ready for the maker, said Miller, sitting beneath a framed photograph of crusading Boston journalist William Monroe Trotter in the paper's Dorchester office. I've been looking for some time for someone to step up and take over the job. I think the banner is needed more than ever. Both Ron and Andre are from old Roxbury families with deep ties to the community. They know the people, the streets, the issues we face. I have very confidence that they will carry on the great work we have done for close to 60 years. Wow.
That deserves
hard
applause.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, wow. I mean, everyone know about the banner. If you don't, it's free. You can get it. You get information on the community. We salute you, Melvin Miller, for the hard work.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service. It is important that you do pass the torch because we need the banner. And we have Boston Black News. Let's talk about media.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm so glad that he recognized it. Although 88, he's right. You know, that he recognized it, has been thinking about it, and is going to have the banner like go into the next generation on his terms.
Right.
You don't want to get to the point where you're so sick it gets taken from you, or whatever.
Or it disappears.
Right. Or it disappears.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets taken from you, step one, and then it disappears, step two. Right. So the fact that he's got a plan, he's passed it on to capable hands, it's exciting, and I think it like bodes well for the future of the Bay State banner.
Right.
And then Black media in general, it's, in my humble opinion, it's more important now than it has ever been.
Yes.
One, and two, are there's local Black media, of course, and national Black media, but you have to go to specific networks to hear news on like on the continent of Africa, what's going on in Africa, that the average person that we should know that we don't know. So when I think Black media, I think local, I think national, and then I think worldwide Black media.
Right. And even particularly now with this new generation, they don't know the stories of those of us who've been in
the trenches.
Right in the trenches, right? Yeah. And it's really sad. And sometimes the elders complain about you have new leadership, they don't pay attention, but we don't tell our story. So there's a project I'm involved with our Dr. Carolyn Crockett, where they're archiving your work. Like they've been archiving Dunk the Vote from 1992 all the way up until now. And I was thinking about like even
Bruce,
with
why
Pastor.
don't you do that?
That's what I said.
Bruce,
Pastor,
why don't you do that?
Archive your work because your legacy moves on.
That's right.
And now at my young age of 60, I'm starting to thinking of legacy.
You don't look 60, Ron.
Thank you.
You don't. 65.
Oh, I do.
65 maybe, but
no.
No.
See,
You don't look 60.
She's a social worker.
Hi, my name is Felicia Harrison, and I listen to Boston Praise Radio and TV 102.9 FM and Boston Black News.
She had me.
No, you look great.
Thank you so much. So it's Women's Month, and there's some.
Can I go back to something you just said? Like
Sure.
you're starting to think legacy. That is so important to, kind of think about life from where you want to end up and then backfill what you need to do to get there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Instead of like arriving one day like, gee, I'm 60. What do I want to do? Like just get on Social Security or something and die.
Right.
And I think planning, maybe we haven't always had, we meaning Black people, maybe we haven't always had the privilege or the room to planfully look at our lives. But I think, again, it's now more important than ever so that those legacies are preserved.
Right.
So that the chain doesn't get broken again and we get separated from our history.
Right. And that's been the history.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like we don't know who's done what.
Right.
And
that's deliberate.
Right.
That's absolutely
well,
deliberate.
Let's talk about
right.
that.
Yeah, that's absolutely deliberate. everybody knows. Let's take, for instance, something that's pretty common now, Black Wall Street, right?
Right.
Can you imagine if you, me, Bruce, generations before us knew that was dinner table, conversation.
Right.
That this is what we did with little to nothing. Because one thing about Black people, you can give us scraps and we'll build an empire.
Big time.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, but that's not how the narrative gets told, because
Right.
it doesn't get told by us.
Right.
It's, we were happy being slaves, we sharecropping. I mean, even when you think about the pictures of sharecroppers, they didn't tell the story behind how backbreaking that work was,
Right.
and how sharecropping led to something else, ownership, right? Land ownership. And then that led to maybe a second or third generation of entrepreneurial farmers or, agriculturists. They don't tell that story. They publicize deliberately hideous pictures of us that tell the story that they want about us. And then because that's all, we don't make the curriculum, and we don't print the school books, the textbooks. That's what we were taught, Ron.
Well, I'm listening to you, right? And
Can I say something just before I forget?
Go ahead.
I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
It's all right.
I was, what was I doing the other day? I was looking at something. I was reading something, and it just occurred to me. Oh, it was young people talking about just the future, young Black people, and they were talking about how self-empowerment starts obviously with self,
Right.
and that we, generations before them, have been taught that Lincoln freed the slaves. We freed ourselves.
We freed ourselves.
Come on now. We freed ourselves. We could have crushed this economy. The United States would have never been a superpower.
Right.
If it wasn't for us, right?
Right.
So don't tell that story that Abe Lincoln, 7'2", whatever he was, that he freed us. That didn't happen.
Right.
But yeah,
Well,
I get excited about
you
it.
just struck a nerve right there, because I think about the statue.
I struck my own nerve.
Well, you struck mine too, because I think about that statue that was in Park Plaza with Lincoln, 7 foot tall,
Yeah.
right, and the slave looking up to him.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
was like, every time I walked by it's hidden, but yet if you walk the streets of Boston, you'll see, you would have seen it. And I'm so glad that they've removed
Yep.
that, because it's just so bad, But I was going to say something about my aunt. I'm listening to you talk about the slaves and how not only were
Enslaved.
the enslaved,
Yeah, right.
and that's thank you
Yeah,
for the correction.
You're welcome.
She
Somebody
said
had to correct me.
One of the best times of her life was picking cotton.
Wow.
I was like, whoa. And for us, I probably wouldn't have been a good slave, enslaved, right? Because they would have killed me.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They would have
Yeah.
killed me, right?
Yeah.
But, just to listen to that, so the mindset was even changed. So even as we talk about us being free, are we free in our minds?
Well, even think about it. So, when we think about the emancipation of the enslaved, so the southern states, right, that didn't want the enslaved to be free,
Right.
they had to. They gave into it. They had to, right? They had no choice. They had to go along with it. But their mindset never changed. And I was thinking about this the other day in a conversation. The North and the South have never been reconciled.
Right.
So that's why the South has their heroes. Because we say up here, why do you have statues of the losers of the Civil War? Well, in their minds, they weren't, right? And so, because the states were never really reconciled to what happened, and a culture was born, we've kept our multiple cultures, all over the country.
Right.
And so you free the people legally, technically, but what did you give them to start with? There were no 40 acres and a mule. We know that, right? And so for some people, the mental chain stayed on, because it was like, well, where do I go now? What do I do now? Oh, they need us to come back, right? So maybe we're not technically enslaved, but the mindset still got passed down
Still there.
generationally. And something you said about picking cotton, her mindset made a thought about mental health just kind of ping in my brain.
Right.
I can't think of the author right now. Bruce, I don't know if you can look him up while we're talking. My Grandmother's Hands. It's a book.
I've heard of that book.
Read it. Life-changing. And the metaphor that he's using about his grandmother's hands is he talks about the passing on of, generational trauma, right? Racial generational trauma. And the author says, he's a black man, he's a social worker, and he said that he loved his grandmother and that she was like the best thing to him, but she had moments. Thank you. Resma Menachem, that's his name. My grandmother's hands. Thank you. And he said, but she had moments. And as a child, he didn't realize that what he was seeing was trauma reactive behavior.
Right.
Like she could be grandma one minute and then like go off on you, the next minute. And he said that he used to love to rub her hands, but her hands felt like leather.
Wow.
And one day he said to her, like, Grandma, like, why are your hands so rough? And she said it was from picking cotton from the time she was like 6 years old.
Wow.
And she said, it is so excruciating to put your hands down in that cotton and come up. The thorns just would tear your skin off, right?
Right.
And she said, but then eventually the skin compensates for that and builds this leathery kind of skin so that it no longer hurts.
Wow.
And he said, that's like a metaphor for black folks.
Yeah.
We've learned to compensate and do things and have developed that tough skin so that the stuff we have to do no longer hurts, but it doesn't mean it doesn't impose trauma. And we don't pass that trauma down to our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids.
Right.
So,
Well,
great book.
Yeah, but also, I want to talk about even the whole incident with Twitch, because that brought us back.
Oh, man.
It brought us back as black men in particularly, the trauma we take on and the pain we carry. Leather, but yet it hurts, right? And I think, I remember in the 90s they had the Casey Foundation came and talked about mental health, and black folks were like, I'm not, just that stigma.
I don't want any parts of it.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, right? But now it's become more, universal. People are able to talk about it and acknowledge it, right? And I think the incident with Trish, because you always see them smiling,
Always.
dancing, best
Always.
moves, on Twitter, Instagram, and then that happens. What's your response?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. That wasn't rhetorical. Okay.
What's your response? Call in 617-282-0685.
There was something, I think you're right. There was something about Twitch's suicide that was so devastating to us. We didn't even know him, but
Right.
it was so devastating. It was like somebody we knew, a family member, had taken his own life. And I think, like you said, his persona was so upbeat, so
Right.
happy, always dancing, him and his wife and his kids, right? That it just it froze me for a minute. Like,
Right.
how in the world was he hiding that much pain that to him the best option seemed to be suicide?
Wow.
Because most people, right, they don't want to die. They want relief from the pain.
Right.
And when you get to the point where you think the only relief is to die, how are you getting up every day and faking the funk? That, so even now when I still see, every now and then, you still see videos of him, I pause him and I just kind of look like, was there any tell? Was there any giveaway? Aside, maybe his wife knew, his family knew, perhaps
Right.
those close to him. But was there any indication? And who knows? I don't think that's an answerable question. But I think you're so right. Black men it's better. I will say that. I'm thrilled. Can I just say this? A plug for social workers. I'm thrilled to see the number of black men entering the clinical social work field or the mental health field in general.
Because we need it.
Because we need it.
Bad.
Exactly.
Right.
I had someone ask me just yesterday, could I refer somebody to a black clinician, a black male clinician, and honestly, the ones I know have wait lists.
Right.
So I couldn't, I said, sorry, I don't, have anybody for you. So the fact that they have wait lists means two things. One, that we're starting to, make a turnaround in terms of getting help and recognizing that it's okay to say you need help. but it also says the fact that they have wait lists says that there's still not enough of us. So, I think we have to keep pushing that.
So as a social worker, right, when you hear these statistics of black men on waiting lists, what is their alternative?
Healthy alternatives we're talking about, Ron?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I don't know what their alternative is.
thank you for being honest.
Yeah.
Because it's a hard question, and I'm looking to find the answer because there are so many black men that come to me asking for help,
Yep.
and I don't know what to do.
Right.
And you hear about these billions of dollars going into various states and cities, but yet you have a segment of our population that's suffering.
Right. A huge segment of the population that's suffering. And in part, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I just said a minute, alluded to about needing more black men in the profession. If I don't think you get me, that you can kind of resonate with you don't have to have lived my same life,
Right.
but if I don't think you get me on some level, when you are in a place of I call it compound depression, because it's one thing after another, after another, after another. When you're in that place,
Right.
you don't have that mental energy to explain yourself to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go in and just be able to talk and problem solve and know that you're heard and not have the person be like, what
Right.
kind of life story is that?
Or pass out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if I can help you. So we need more people that will resonate with our own stories. And I mean, break it down culturally, not just black. We need black Latinos, West Indians, Africans, right? Because everybody's story isn't the same, even though our skin color is the same.
But we say black and of the diaspora.
Yeah.
And
But you know how it, like a Nigerian
Right.
will think that I can't resonate really. I get it on some level,
Right.
but no, we weren't raised Nigerian. Go ahead.
You from New York? Caller, you're live on Boston Black News. I'm
You're
from
a mess.
Michigan.
You're a mess.
Hello.
Peace. Good morning. This is Jamal calling.
I knew
in.
it
How
was
y'all
Jamal.
Jamal, we got to have Jamal in this convo.
Good
doing?
morning, Jamal.
And good morning. And I'm so glad that you're there because when you're there, they act better. They be on their best behavior.
Thank you for taking Jamal.
That's
All
funny.
right.
Yeah, I called her mother when she came in. You got to behave.
Now, here goes the other thing. I'll start with the banner. Just, I want to do a little bit of fake news here because it was funny when I saw the headline. Now, I know Ron Mitchell. I think Ron Mitchell might be 78 himself.
He's my age. He's my age.
All right. So let's not act like Mel Miller passed this on to some 20-something-year-old folks out of college. God bless them. But they're not exactly some young whippersnappers here. Ron Mitchell's been around for a while. I've known the other brother as well, so I actually, jokingly say that. But I do hope that they do take more advantage of some of the social media, the technology that's
Absolutely.
out there. That they do reach out to some of these local universities and try to grab
And
some
us.
kids who are doing right partnership with y'all for sure.
Yeah.
But some of these young journalists and content creators out there and all that. So it definitely is a chance for the banner to rebrand itself, expand. They're already talking about expansion, so that's good for them. But I don't want nobody to get twisted and thinking Ron Mitchell just got out of college.
No. I agree.
Well, in the story, it says he's 61.
Yeah. No, I'm just joking because just the headline was like, new young leadership. I just like, wow, that's funny.
Right.
And as black men too. It's like, how long are we young? Because, people still call me young man today, and I'm 52 years old. And, I'm like, I've been paying my own bills for, 35 years. I mean, geez. But in any event, I called about the point of the mental health because just like y'all, I get a lot of people who come to me for either mental health referrals as well as, maybe addiction stuff that centers around addiction stuff.
Right.
And the backlog out there is crazy. It was already crazy before COVID, but then after COVID, it got more crazy. And the black practitioners is, as you noted, far and few between. Now, not only are there waiting lists, I got to tell you, I've been turned down by some people, particularly, like, now I have better insurance, but for a moment there, I was on Mass Health. And some people,
That's right.
straight up front
Real
was
talk,
like,
right?
nah, we're not going to mess with you because, it takes us so long to get our payment from Mass Health or whatever. So
Or
it
the
was
reimbursement rate isn't high enough for them.
right, there you
That's
go.
what
So
it
they're
is.
like, so some people were just refusing that, which is also a problem because, of course, many of the people on Mass Health who have financial difficulties or other difficulties, those are some of the people who need that help the most.
Right.
So there has to be a way, now with the new governor and the mayor and as you said, a lot of the money that's coming through, but also too, right here on this station, I encourage you to try to bring some of those groups in. I know that there's a group of like black psychologists. I know Sister Karen could tell you about, there's like black social worker groups and start bringing some of these folks in to try to develop some solutions because our community is
That's a good idea.
hurting
That's a
and
very good idea.
stressed out.
Right.
And ultimately, as a guy in the community who, I do my thing and all that, I struggle too.
Right. We
and
all
when you
do.
say like, right, and when you say, Sister Karen, like, like what do people do when they can't get no help? We bite the bullet. We grin and bear it. We just, keep on keeping on and all that type of stuff. Because at the end of the day, what else are you going to do? The options are put one foot forward in front of the other or go fold up in the corner and cry.
Right.
So
Or get high.
Well,
Right. Self-medicate.
some of us do some of us do a combination of all three. Okay.
Well,
But for real, whatever you got to do to cope.
Right.
But I'm saying at the end of the day, we all show up.
Right.
People are going to work every day or going to school every day, and people are in pain.
Right.
Now, if you see,
Right.
hey, what happened to Ron? He ain't been to work all week. Now you might say, oh, that's a red flag. Maybe something is going on.
Right.
But there's probably something going on every day, and people just got to keep,
Right.
they got to go, got to pay rent, got to have lights, this type of thing. And we're under so much stress, we have to work out a strategy as a community. And Sister Karen, to your point as well, last week or whenever, finding the professionals in the churches as well. So that's it. I'm going to shut up.
thank you.
No.
No, I don't mean that.
I
no.
know. Jamal, I just wanted, yeah, you caught that, Jamal, right?
Yep.
Couple of things that sparked a thought when you were speaking is, of course, now I just lost the thought.
No, I didn't, you know what? No, we're going to clarify that. When I said thank you, I want to make sure we transition. That's my man.
When you said we're going to show up, there's an upside. That's like our superpower, but it's also our kryptonite as well, because for so long, that was our only option.
Right.
We didn't have the luxury of feeling bad, taking a day off, going on a vacation, even listening to our bodies. What's my body telling me? What's this migraine about?
Right.
We didn't have the luxury. So, of course, that's how our parents parented us, right? My mother used to tell me, the first time she saw me take a nap when my kids were little in the middle of the day,
Right.
she looked at me like there was something wrong with me. And she said, naps are for night, sleeping is for nighttime. You don't sleep all this day. And I was like, Mom, I'm exhausted mentally, physically. And one day she and I had a conversation, and I looked at her and I said, Mom, I'm really sorry that you didn't have the luxury to listen to your body and to be tired when you were tired. I do. I'm trying not to kill myself, so I'm trying to listen to me. But we were taught to show up.
Right.
You just do it. And so when that almost becomes part of our DNA. Mm-hmm. And so now when we're trying to reverse that and say, no. It's okay to not show up. Let's normalize the fact that everybody has bad days. Everybody has seasons. Sometimes they're moments, sometimes they're days, they're weeks, but sometimes they're seasons, and they're tough.
Right.
And that doesn't make you an anomaly. That's actually pretty normal.
But you're human.
That's
And
what I
that's-
mean.
right.
But my girlfriend used to say, she was like, white women, she said, if they get a hangnail, they're going to therapy,
Right.
right? But
we gonna make
tough it
ourselves.
out.
We're gonna tough it out.
Right.
We have another caller. Boston Black News, you're live. Caller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
fine.
It's so good to hear you on the. I get a chance to call in while you're on. It's very good.
Oh, Pastor Dan? Is this Pastor
Yes.
Dan? Oh, hey, good morning.
My friend Pastor Dan. We got a whole bunch of callers. So what's your question, Pastor?
Okay. Well, no, actually, it was more of a comment. The one thing that I've learned is that we have not been able to get through the crab mentality. Mm-hmm. There's still within our culture I don't know if it's a desire or if somebody thinks different than us, then we begin to question their authenticity. You don't have a black mindset, or you don't talk black, or you don't dress black, or those type of things. And for somebody like myself who's been on the wrong side of that, it's difficult to understand if talking black and dressing black means that I have to discriminate against somebody that doesn't do it. Why would I want to do that?
Okay.
I don't understand the comment.
Okay.
I didn't understand it.
The comment is about The comment is about black people like myself who have never really fit into a quote unquote Afrocentric mold.
Okay.
And because of that, have suffered within the black culture because of that.
Okay.
Okay. I think I get it. I think I hear you.
Okay. Well,
Pastor
all right.
Dan.
Yes.
I don't know if you're listening or watching.
I am.
But I am pasty light skin. Do you hear me? So
I saw you.
Do you know what
I saw the picture.
So when you talk about not fitting into a black mold, I mean, do you know what I heard my entire life growing up?
Oh, yes.
Little white girl, you think you're cute, da 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 da. But but my question to you is, who told you that? I think of quickly in Genesis when God tells Adam and Eve, don't touch it, and they go ahead and do it, and then all of a sudden they realize they're naked, and then they're ashamed then, and they want to cover up, and God is looking for them, and they say that he says to them, like, you ate from the tree of life that I told you not to, and they said, yeah, and they said, and now we're naked and we're ashamed, and God says to them, who told you that?
Wow.
Who told you had to hide from me? Who told you that you now you needed to cover up? And so when I think of what you're saying, your experience, I like to kind of get an aerial view of that and ask myself sometimes, where did I get that from? Who told me that I'm really not accepted? Because in my generation, I don't know if we're the same age or not, that kind of split was created by media. Right. It was created by what was accepted as a standard of beauty. And so that's what made when you were talking about the crabs, were you talking about the crab in the barrel mentality?
Yes.
Okay, so here's my thing. Crabs don't belong in a barrel.
No, they don't.
So who put them in the... So don't look at the crabs in the barrel. Who put them in the barrel?
Right.
That's what we want to look at. And so the same thing with black folks, right? We were never meant to be pitted against each other. Our diversity, our differences are beautiful, and they were fine. So who created that context, that narrative, that there was a black standard of whatever, speaking, looking,
beauty,
dressing, talking.
Of attitude,
right.
of dress.
We didn't create that. So we need to stop looking at each other in the barrel.
Speaking of looking at each other, thank you, Pastor Dan. We have so many callers on the air. I just want to get some other flavor in there. Caller, you're live on Boston Black News.
Me? Am I live?
Yes, you are.
Why, good morning. Let me greet you the way I always greet you. Brother.
All right now, sis.
And Sister Karen. This is Zakia Awake. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
I am excited. I've had such a great week, starting with last Friday at the radio show with Ron, and then accompanying him or meeting him at the First Church of Roxbury for the, brother, remind me, what is it called? Hacking the Archives?
Hacking the Archives. Actually, Hacking the Archives our series towards leadership.
But I can still tie it into. I just started listening a few minutes ago, but
Right.
I could pick up from what Brother Jamal and Sister Pastor Karen and you were talking about. Sounds like we're talking about one of our most important subjects, trauma and recovery.
There you go.
And we were. I could hear that Brother Jamal was concerned about the long wait time for practitioners that could provide the kind of context that we want, as often want as Black people.
Right.
And so those are things that you and I, Ron, we talk about it every time we get together.
Right.
Because it's so pressing in our community. And then I also heard that the banner being sold. I got a call yesterday from somebody who asked me, would the publication I'm associated with, Dig Boston, be interested in a partnership with the banner if this person could pull it up? I said, brother, we're already in one. It's
Right.
just that we haven't used it as much as we possibly could. But perhaps with new ownership, with new ownership often comes new energies, and you can see some new things happening. Let's see if Boston Black News Radio and the other projects up there where you are right now can have more of a presence in the banner. Who knows?
Right.
The possibilities seem endless. But I'm really excited about the archive, and about learning how to tell our stories,
Right.
our oral histories.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't you want to be able to leave a trail of breadcrumbs, as I like to say, for the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren, et cetera, to know, well, this is how he did it.
Right.
This is how he created Dunk the Vote. Oh, these are the things he said that were dangerous that he had to overcome and look out for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they don't have to keep making the same mistakes. Let the next generations make different mistakes.
Right.
You got any questions for me before I get off the phone?
Thank you for calling in. Where are you calling from?
Oh, I'm in. I'm not supposed to say exactly because of security reasons, but I'm in Connecticut with the youngest set of grandchildren. I'm in an undisclosed bunker with the grandchildren and Rocky the pit bull, looking out in a beautiful snow-covered backyard, just living my best life. I'll be back in town on Thursday.
God bless
in time for the next session of Real Talk for Change at the MIT class that I'm in. Yesterday, they showed the video that you narrated.
Yeah.
Oh, man, those students were they couldn't take their eyes off the screen, Ron. You are so impactful. You have no idea with your humble self.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Love
Zakia.
you.
Love you, too. Caller, you're live on Boston Black News.
Ron, humble, interesting combination of words. Okay. Can I just say something to Pastor Dan? I don't know if he's still on before we take this.
Yes, he's still on.
So, I just wanted to say, Pastor Dan, that kind of experience can be very damaging. And so I would encourage you to try to take that kind of aerial view that I mentioned very quickly. It's easier said than done. I get it. I've spent my life working on that so that you're not reacting out of circumstances that weren't created by you nor the Black people that rejected you, for lack of a better term. So I just wanted to say that. And Ron, take it away.
No. I know. No, that's important. And, I think there are a lot of folks grappling with many things in their lives. And it's important that we are able to talk about this.
Right.
Years ago, when it was introduced to the missionary community, people looked as if, it was taboo. And it's not taboo. Right. You're human.
This Black man's issues are no better, worse, different, valuable, less valuable than yours.
Right.
You know what I mean? Everybody's got issues, and they're not going to come the same way.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
That's all I wanted to say.
And go ahead.
What I did, because she's right, you have to. My grandmother was the same color as you are, so I learned all of the. She was a product of a non-consensual liaison with a slave owner, and a slave.
Enslaved.
So, yeah. So enslaved, thank you. And so she was pretty much the same color as you, if not lighter. So I learned all of those comments that you may have heard yourself concerning the color of your skin and your attitude and all that stuff. And I'm sorry to say that she became very bitter and was a very cold, unfeeling person. A lot of it had to do with what she went through. Mm-hmm. So you would think that a person who's been through that would maybe find some more compassion for other people. But in her case, I'm sorry to say it wasn't the case.
No, she reacted out of her trauma.
Exactly, and continued to her going home period. Mm-hmm. But the people that I was introduced into that home. I didn't grow up in that home. I was introduced into that home, and not having the same speech patterns, not having the same mindset as everyone else, did create situations for me. Now, it's easy to understand that they're reacting, but when you're when you're a child,
yeah,
and the people who are coming after you look like you.
Right.
It's difficult. And then when you go out into the world and you find, you find the first time I heard the N-word was by a kid a little boy in when I was in the first grade.
Right.
A little white kid called me the N-word, and nothing happened to him. I was like, okay. I didn't know what it meant, but I was sure that wasn't right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, there was all of that, but you would hope.
You know what, Mr. Dan? Structural racism that has impacted all of us has. It is not only impacted black folks; it's impacted white folks. They've been robbed of some of our greatness simply because it wasn't told to them. And then many of us have internalized the messages that were sent to us. And I want to encourage you. Your grandmother or great grandmother, whoever the lady was, grandmother. She raised you, or she interacted with you out of what she knew. I always say, if people know better, they do better. And hurt people. So she imposed that on you and others. I would encourage you, though, if you maybe vacation this year, when you go on vacation and you just have time to think and you're not thinking about ministry and, helping other people, to really try to re-envision what that little boy would have been like if he had just been free to be a little black boy, and how your impact with her has grown with you. I mean, you're living it now. I hear it in your voice, And so you never know. You might find other new relationships on the other side of really taking that on and thinking about it. One of the things, too, I'm not saying you're not expressing this for her. I just want to put it out there, that one of the things I find particularly healing, I can't speak for other groups of people, but because of the systemic generational racism that we have experienced as black people in this country, grace and forgiveness is critical to our healing.
Important.
And that means you may have to forgive that grandmother who you will never understand why she did what she did and how she impacted you and how that felt as a little boy to be rejected. All of that stuff. You're not going to get those answers. She's gone. But are you going to let that impact the rest of your life? Or are you going to change your legacy? Are you going to change the people that you interact with? Are you going to change how you see things, how you embrace differences? Do you know what I mean? And just be free to be the black man. Be free to be the black man you are.
Yeah,
that's my thought.
I wasn't allowed to pastor until I came to grips with just what you're talking about, being able to forgive all of those people in my younger life who hurt me, and also to be able to understand that in true ministry, all ministry is based on betrayal. You're going to do true ministry, you're going to have to learn to deal with betrayal and rejection and all of that stuff. That was what I needed. I didn't need papers and certificates from different things. God did not allow me to pastor until I came to the realization that what you said, hurt people.
Right.
And you have got to learn to forgive in the face of your pain.
Right.
Because that's what Christ did. And if you're going to represent him, you have to do that. So you're absolutely right. I brought it up more because it's unfortunately, it's so ingrained in us.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That sometimes we don't even know we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Spike Lee's movie, Do the Right Thing, or even the one where they had the conversation about good and bad hair.
Right.
The whole song, I don't know if it's Do the Right Thing, I don't know what movie it was, but it was School Days.
Okay.
I think it was School Days, where they had this whole thing about nappy head and straight hair.
Right.
Good and bad hair.
And my bad hair is standing up right now because there's a lot of calls coming in.
Okay.
Okay.
We gotta go. All right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Dan. So
You're welcome.
all right. Caller, you're live on Boston Black News. Oh, we lost him. Okay. But Pastor K, wow,
Yes, sir.
this has been incredible. We talked about the black media and the passing of the pen with Mel Miller and trauma, our community. And people want to talk. You know,
They
you
do.
see from the callers
do.
that are coming in and the pain. I mean, you could just feel it, right?
They do.
So, what is your advice? What do you think? I mean, you know, I have my thoughts on, you know, the talking, finding help, using media outlets like this, right? Because you don't get the opportunity to express yourself in a safe environment, and I believe this is a
Right.
good space, right?
Right,
Boston
right.
Black News has allowed our community to call in and talk what they feel and what they experience. So,
I mean, I agree with you. I just want to emphasize that last point, Ron. I agree with you because you had the three callers that we had this morning couldn't be more different.
right,
You know what I mean? But yet this was the central point for them to come and meet and express their feelings and their thoughts. And it was fine.
right,
You know, it wasn't anything. Nobody was, clutching their pearls or anything. Nobody was rejecting their stories or invalidating their stories. Your story is your story.
right. And we can relate.
Right. But even if I can't relate,
Right.
like, okay, that's your story.
Right.
You know? Yeah, even if I can't relate, that's your story. And I respect it. And because I get to some extent, I mean, so if I consider myself a perpetual student, I always tell Bruce, I will be learning until the day I die.
Right.
And so I know more now than I knew when I was younger, but obviously I always want to know what I don't know. And so the thing that's always curious to me, you can meet a black person on the continent of Africa, but there's a connection,
It's a connection,
that hasn't
right.
been broken,
Right.
And so when we downsize that to a micro level, my situation wasn't Pastor Dan's or Jamal's or Zakia's, right? But we instantly, you know how it is. We see each other in the street, don't have to know you.
Right.
Right.
Right. You just feel that vibe, right?
That wasn't broken.
Right.
It was damaged. It was bruised, but that wasn't broken for most of us. And so that's the thing that I think we need to seize on. That kernel of similarity, of likeness, of like we know how to read each other's expressions.
Right.
Don't have to know you, but if somebody's like, that means like suspect.
Right. Know yourself, be yourself. Right.
So I agree with you. I think just as we've been talking today, and Jamal's comments kind of made me think about more spaces and even what I want to do as I think about retirement. Because I want to retire from the place I'm employed by, but not from this work. I love this, this work. And what legacy am I going to leave? Are you going to leave? In terms of helping us be healthier people and passing on stuff, breaking that chain of passing on Black trauma.
Right.
That's hugely important,
Very
for our
important.
kids,
Right.
because it builds in an infrastructure for the kids that maybe we didn't have because we weren't protected like that in certain ways. We got the media onslaughts. We got the textbooks that had showed pictures of little pickaninnies. We got the stuff about good hair, bad hair, all created to divide us.
Right. Light skin, dark skin.
Light skin, dark skin, right? Bougie Black folks. Well, if that's even a thing, I think it is, but
It is.
right. All of that stuff. How do we begin to use that
Right.
to our advantage? And I do think creating more spaces. Not everybody is going to go to therapy,
Right.
but sitting in a space where somebody tells a story that sounds like yours, and you don't even know me.
Right.
I don't know you.
Right.
But there's a similarity. Or you've just said something that lets me know that my story isn't like a 1 in a million story. That maybe more people than I know are struggling with raising their kids. What? Are you kidding me?
Right.
We have another call? I'm sorry. No? Oh, okay.
But you talk about that, breaking that generational trauma, but I do want to highlight something because you corrected myself as well as Pastor Dan. Enslaved, slave. Explain that, because I understand that, but I want our viewers and listeners here at Boston Black News. We want to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Right. So, one, I think to refer to us, our people, our ancestors as slaves, the slaves, whatever, dehumanizes us, right? That enslaved person, they didn't choose to be a slave, right? They were enslaved by a structure, right? That they were enslaved. I was going to go off on a whole tangent. They were enslaved.
Right.
Their names were taken away. Their culture, they tried to take their culture away, their language, all these other things, and change them into something that was dehumanizing. Because you can't, if I just think of you as a slave, it's much easier for me to dehumanize you than if I think of you as an enslaved human being who, before I met you, you had a culture, you had an economy, you had a language, you had traditions, you had rituals, you had child rearing practices that we tried to strip you of.
Right.
And if we take all that away, it's much easier to take your babies from you because you don't really love them anyway. And you can produce them every 9 months for me.
Right.
Or to beat your man in front of you, or to separate to separate your children, to sell you, your husband, your kids, your mother. All that kind of stuff is much easier if I view you as simply a slave, something I own, my chattel, versus an enslaved individual who was minding their business right, on another continent before we decided to go over there and try to strip them of everything, similar to the way they've tried to strip the continent of Africa of all their riches. But that's a conversation
Similar
for
to
another
what's
day.
going on now. I mean,
absolutely.
you look at words, you say language, right? Minority,
Right.
majority, minority. I mean, that sounds like an oxymoron. Webster must be. I mean, what's a majority minority?
Right.
It's like, I remember I was speaking at the Freedom House years ago,
but
right?
Ron, that was created to keep us in a box.
Right.
Right? Like, you're right. Numerically, how can a majority of people be a minority?
Right.
Because we told you so. That's what we told you were. Right?
And you believed it.
And you believed it. And so we walk around with that in that box. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
That's right. Freedom House. Speaking there, I was getting an award, right? And a reporter had asked me before I accepted, when are we going to have our first minority mayor? And I said, we already have one, Mayor Menino, in a majority-minority city, right? And that, I keep saying that to folks, like, you keep saying we're majority-minority. That doesn't even make sense,
Right.
Enslaved, when are we going to break that generational trauma that we pass on, right? We have 2 minutes left. Pastor K, can you just give us some encouraging words, some marching orders? We are in March. March on. It's the second day of March, Women's March.
Second or third. Yeah.
It's one of them, I know it's close.
Well, just we didn't touch a lot on Women's History Month, and that's fine because we had a great conversation, I think.
Right.
But I want to encourage people to normalize Women's History Month. Something I did, I am in my 60s, and something I did this year that I'd never done before. I've always celebrated Black History Month in my circles.
Right.
This year, I was determined to normalize Black History Month. So, for instance, I would go into meetings at my job where there weren't many that looked like me, and I would start whatever I had to say with "Happy Black History Month, everybody," right? Because I want you to understand.
Right.
I'm going to normalize it. I'm sorry that they don't celebrate it in your circles, but
Right.
it's going to be celebrated everywhere I come into, right?
Yeah.
So, Happy Black History Month,
Thank
right?
you.
Even in, professional settings, I would have a jacket on like this, and I'd have a Black History Month T-shirt on underneath it, right? But that's a little thing, and it's funny, but you saw people like do one of those numbers.